It was a quiet Sunday morning in Santa Fe, the kind that smelled like cinnamon coffee and rain waiting to fall. The sun was soft, not yet fierce, filtering through the windows of El Camino Diner, a small roadside place that most travelers forgot by the time they hit the next exit. Inside, the air hummed with the soft buzz of ceiling fans and the scratch of old country music playing from a radio near the counter. Emily Carter adjusted her apron for the fifth time that morning. 24, shy, small-town quiet, the kind of girl who moved like she didn't want to disturb the air around her. She worked the morning shift, always in silence, her kindness tucked behind a nervous smile. But today, the diner wasn't quiet for long. A sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel lot. Its windows were tinted, gleaming like obsidian under the pale sun. Everyone inside the diner turned to look. Two men in suits stepped out, first dark, deliberate, alert. Then a third door opened, and a woman emerged. She was older, graceful, her hair silver and pinned neatly. She wore a cream dress, soft against the desert tones of Santa Fe, and dark sunglasses that didn't quite hide the weight of her presence. And when she walked inside, the diner fell utterly silent. Emily felt her throat tighten. She didn't need anyone to whisper to know who this was. She'd seen her once, years ago, in a newspaper article that had vanished from local shelves within a day. Dona Esperanza Vargas, mother of Alejandro Vargas, the most feared man in the Southwest. But Dona Esperanza was not what Emily expected. There was a softness to her movements, a gentleness in the way she touched the table before sitting, as if feeling for the world through her fingertips. The waitress at the next counter whispered, "She's deaf, you know. Has been since she was a girl." Emily's heart fluttered. She looked at the older woman, so serene, so self-contained, and felt something stir. The other waitresses hesitated, exchanging looks, none daring to approach. Emily swallowed her fear, picked up her notepad, and walked over. When she reached the table, Dona Esperanza lifted her head, eyes curious, waiting for words she could not hear. Emily froze until instinct took over. She set the notepad down, smiled gently, and began to sign. "Good morning. Welcome. Would you like coffee?" For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the woman's face softened into surprise. Her fingers trembled slightly before she responded, her hands elegant and fluid in motion. "You sign?" Emily nodded. "My grandmother was deaf. She raised me." The faintest smile curved Dona Esperanza's lips. "You sign beautifully." The men in suits glanced at each other, visibly stunned. They weren't used to anyone speaking to their matriarch in her own language. Most simply stared, awkward and unsure, hoping her son's name alone would command respect. But Emily didn't bow or freeze. She just smiled and poured the coffee. As she did, she signed softly, "Cream or sugar?" "Black," the older woman signed back. Like sin. Emily couldn't help a tiny laugh, which made the guards exchange uncertain looks. Dona Esperanza watched her for a long time, as if searching her face for something. Then, with a graceful flick of her wrist, she asked, "What is your name, child?" "Emily. Do you know who I am?" "Yes." The older woman tilted her head. "And you're not afraid?" Emily hesitated, then signed back, "Should I be?" Dona Esperanza smiled faintly, her eyes glinting with something between amusement and melancholy. "Most are, but you look like someone who listens before she speaks." My son could learn from that. The conversation continued quietly between them, all in the language of hands and eyes. It was a sight that drew the attention of every patron in the diner. The feared Cartel lord's mother and a shy young waitress, communicating like two souls who'd been waiting to be understood. When Emily brought the bill, Dona Esperanza placed her hand over hers gently, then turned to her guards and signed something quick and firm. One of them nodded and left the diner. Emily watched, confused. A few minutes later, the man returned carrying a small velvet box. He placed it on the table beside the empty coffee cup. Dona Esperanza signed, "A gift. For your hands. They speak truth." Emily shook her head immediately. "I can't accept this." The older woman's gaze softened but stayed firm. "Then it's not a gift. It's gratitude." Inside the box was a silver bracelet, engraved with the faint outline of a jaguar. Emily hesitated, feeling the weight of it, cold, beautiful, heavy with unspoken meaning. When she looked back up, Dona Esperanza was signing something new. Slower now, If my son ever comes here and he will, tell him you met me. Tell him I smiled. He will know what that means. Emily nodded, not fully understanding but sensing something sacred in the request. Moments later, the woman rose. The guards opened the door. A soft gust of desert wind swept in, carrying the faint scent of rain. Dona Esperanza turned back before leaving, her eyes meeting Emily's one last time. You have kind hands, she sighed. But careful, Nina, the world breaks gentle things first. And then she was gone. The diner slowly returned to life, voices rising again like waves after a storm. The waitress beside Emily whispered, "Do you even know who that was?" Emily could only nod. Her hands were still trembling. When she went to clean the table, she noticed something under the coffee cup, a folded napkin with one word written in elegant cursive. Soon. The letters shimmered faintly from a trace of water, as if written with trembling hands or tears. That night, as the rain finally fell over Santa Fe, Emily lay awake, the bracelet cool against her wrist. She didn't know what soon meant, but something in her heart told her it wasn't a promise. It was a warning. By the time the desert sun rose again over Santa Fe, the story of the waitress who signed to the cartel lord's deaf mother had already traveled beyond the dusty diner walls. Some said Dona Esperanza had smiled for the first time in years. Others whispered that she'd left behind more than a silver bracelet. But none of them knew what the words soon written on the napkin really meant. Emily Carter didn't know either. She only knew that since that day, strangers had begun noticing her in ways that made her uneasy. Cars idled too long outside the diner. Men came in asking for coffee they didn't drink. And sometimes late at night, she thought she saw headlights parked across the street. Engine running, waiting. Still, she kept showing up for work. Routine was her safety net. But that morning, 4 days after Dona Esperanza's visit, the air in El Camino diner felt different, heavy, too still. The regulars were gone. The cook moved nervously behind the grill. The waitress who worked the register kept glancing out the window. Then, at exactly 9:17 a.m., 3 black SUVs rolled into the lot. Emily's chest tightened. She didn't need to see who it was to know. The silence inside the diner broke like glass when the door opened. Alejandro Vargas stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, black shirt tucked neatly into tailored slacks. His presence filled the room like a storm rolling in, controlled, slow, inevitable. His eyes, dark as the road after rain, scanned the diner once before landing on her. The room seemed to shrink around him. He walked forward without a word. When he reached the counter, Emily's knees felt weak. "Emily Carter," he said quietly. His voice was deep, smooth, and cold in a way that made her feel both frightened and strangely seen. "My mother told me about you." Emily swallowed. She came in for coffee. She doesn't drink coffee outside her home. He studied her, expression unreadable. "She hasn't in 20 years. Emily blinked. She said she wanted to taste it again. She seemed kind. At that, a flicker of emotion passed across his face, something like pain, quickly hidden. "She told me you spoke to her," he said. "In her language." Emily nodded, heart pounding. She seemed surprised. He stared at her hands. "Sign something for me." She hesitated. "What should I say?" He leaned slightly closer. "Whatever you said to her." Emily took a breath and signed. "Good morning. Welcome. Would you like coffee?" For a moment, something broke through the steel mask of Alejandro Vargas. His lips curved not into a smile, but into something more fragile. "She told me that's the first time in a long while someone spoke to her with kindness," he said softly. "She also said your hands told the truth. I just wanted her to feel welcome." He studied her a long time, as if trying to decide what kind of creature she was. Then finally he said, "She liked you." "That means something." The air around them thickened. Everyone else in the diner was silent, pretending not to exist. Alejandro reached into his jacket and placed a small white envelope on the counter. "This is for you." Emily stared at it. "I can't. It's not money." His voice softened. "It's a letter." She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper handwritten in elegant script. It was from Dona Esperanza Menina de las Manos Suaves. "When you read this, I will already be gone. My son will come to find you. Trust him, even when you shouldn't. You saw me and you listened. I am at peace now. Tell him that for me. Emily's throat closed. Gone, she whispered. Alejandro's jaw tightened. She died last night. Her heart sank. I'm so sorry. He nodded once, but his voice stayed quiet, steady. She passed in her sleep. No pain, but before she did, she asked to write this. He looked at her again long, searching, as though trying to find something his mother might have seen in her. I need you to tell me everything she said that day, he said. Every word. Emily swallowed hard. She told me you'd come. She said if I saw you, I should tell you, she smiled. At that, Alejandro closed his eyes. His hand clenched once on the counter, knuckles pale. She smiled, he repeated, voice breaking slightly. She hadn't done that in years. The room went silent again, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. When he opened his eyes, they were darker, harder. There are people who wanted her silence permanent, he said. You might have seen them. Emily froze. What are you saying? I'm saying that anyone who spoke to her in those last days might be in danger. Including you. What? I didn't do anything. Neither did she, he said quietly. And yet she died the night after meeting you. A chill ran through her. I don't think it was natural, he added. Emily took a step back. You think someone killed her? He didn't answer, but his silence said everything. He looked at her, eyes fierce but not cruel. I'm taking you somewhere safe. Pack what you need. I'm not going anywhere with you, she whispered. Alejandro leaned closer, his voice almost tender now. If I were you, I'd look at the car parked across the street before deciding. Emily turned slowly. Through the diner's window she saw it, a white sedan she'd noticed for days. Same one. Same tinted glass. Her stomach dropped. Who are they? She asked. People who think you know something, he said. And if they think that, they won't stop until they find out what. Her hands trembled. Why me? Because you were the last person my mother smiled at. The weight of that truth pressed into her chest. I can't just leave my life, she whispered. Alejandro's voice lowered. Sometimes life leaves you first. And with that, he reached out a hand, not forceful, not cold, but steady. Please, Emily. She hesitated, heart pounding in her throat. The bracelet on her wrist, his mother's gift, gleamed faintly in the light. She looked from it to him, then to the window, where the sedan's shadow waited. Finally, she took his hand, the moment their skin touched. Something electric passed between them, something both terrifying and strangely familiar. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm that had begun with a single cup of coffee was far from over. The drive south from Santa Fe was quiet, except for the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the low growl of thunder rolling across the desert. Emily sat rigid in the passenger seat of Alejandro Vargas's black SUV. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The silver bracelet around her wrist caught flashes of lightning through the windshield, glinting like a secret trying to speak. She had no idea where he was taking her, only that he hadn't stopped watching the mirrors once since they'd left the diner. Finally, after 2 tense hours, he turned off the main road and followed a narrow dirt path that wound through mesquite trees and old adobe ruins. Ahead stood a sprawling hacienda, hidden behind an iron gate and surrounded by desert silence so complete it felt sacred. This was hers, he said softly, pulling to a stop. Emily turned to him. Your mother's house? Alejandro nodded. She called it La Casa del Silencio, the House of Silence. It was her refuge. No one comes here unless I allow it. The name sent a chill through Emily. When they entered, the first thing she noticed was the light. The house was built around an open courtyard filled with blooming lavender, their scent faint and calming even in the damp air. Every corner seemed to whisper her presence. Dona Esperanza's calm, her elegance, her discipline. Photos lined the walls, black and white portraits of a young Esperanza smiling, her eyes luminous and proud. Alejandro paused in front of one of them. She lost her hearing when she was 9, he said. Fever. My grandfather used to say she never spoke again, not with her mouth, anyway. But she learned to command without words. Emily studied the photo, her heart tight. She looked kind. She was, he murmured, until the world gave her reasons not to be. He turned then, his dark eyes landing on her. You must be hungry. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd eaten. The house staff, silent, watchful, brought them soup, bread, and tea served in thin porcelain cups. The aroma of herbs filled the air. As she ate, Alejandro stood by the window, watching the fading storm. You said she wrote soon on a napkin before she left? Emily nodded. Yes, I didn't know what it meant. He exhaled slowly. It meant she knew. Knew what? That she was being watched. Emily froze, spoon halfway to her lips. You think they killed her because she talked to me? I think they killed her because she knew too much. He turned toward her. And because you're the only person she spoke to outside our family in months. The words hit like thunder. I don't know anything, she said, her voice small. You might have seen something. Heard something, but she couldn't speak. Alejandro's jaw tightened. She didn't need to. He paced slowly across the room, like a man fighting his own thoughts. The night before she died, she sent one message through her interpreter. Just one word. Tracian. Betrayal, Emily whispered. He nodded. Someone close. Someone inside my circle. Emily felt her stomach twist. And you think I can help you find them? I think my mother trusted you for a reason. He stopped, eyes locking on hers. She saw things in people before they saw them in themselves. Emily looked away, trying to steady her breath. The wind outside had shifted, carrying the smell of rain and dust. I'm just a waitress, she said quietly. I make coffee and forget names. Alejandro's voice softened. You remembered hers. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with grief, curiosity, something almost tender. She stood and walked toward the open courtyard. Rainwater glittered in puddles among the lavender. The air felt alive, electric, humming with echoes of voices that had never been spoken aloud. She told me something else, Emily said, turning back. Before she left, Alejandro stepped closer. What? She said. If you ever came, I should tell you, she smiled. That you would know what it means. For the first time, Alejandro's composure cracked. His eyes glistened, his voice low and trembling. It means forgiveness. He turned away quickly, wiping his face with the back of his hand. As if ashamed to show grief, Emily's heart ached at the sight. This man, so feared, so composed, was just a son mourning his mother. She took a hesitant step closer. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wish I could have done more. You did more than anyone else ever did, he said, not looking at her. You listened. The lights flickered suddenly, plunging them into half-darkness. Alejandro straightened immediately, instincts sharp. Stay here. He moved toward the hall, hand resting on the gun at his hip. Emily followed anyway, quietly, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The power outage had cloaked the house in uneasy silence. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the soft drip of water from the eaves. Then came a sound, a faint, deliberate tap against the window pane. Emily froze. Alejandro reached it first, pulled the curtain aside, and found a small white envelope taped to the glass. He opened the window, tore it free, and unfolded the note. His eyes darkened as he read. What does it say? Emily whispered. He looked up slowly. It says she should have stayed silent. Her blood went cold. Before she could speak, the phone on the table rang. The sound was shrill, old-fashioned, cutting through the quiet like a scream. Alejandro lifted the receiver. He listened for 3 seconds, then slammed it down, face pale. What was it? She asked. He turned to her, voice a low growl. They know you're here. Outside, somewhere beyond the lavender courtyard, an engine started. Then another. Alejandro grabbed her hand. We have to go. No. As he pulled her through the back hallway, Emily looked once more toward the framed photos on the wall. Dona Esperanza smiling, young, alive. For an instant, the reflection of lightning made her eyes seem to move, as if watching them flee, and in that fleeting illusion, Emily thought she saw the faintest movement of fingers signing. Something she couldn't quite understand. It looked like a warning, or maybe a farewell. The desert swallowed the sound of their tires as Alejandro's SUV tore through the dark. The headlights carved thin tunnels of light through the dust. the engine growling low and urgent. Emily sat pressed against the seat, heart pounding, the wind howling through the cracked window. They had left La Casa del Silencio less than 15 minutes ago, but it already felt like another life. Behind them, faint and distant, a glow flickered on the horizon. Orange, rising, spreading. The house was burning. Emily's hand trembled. Was anyone? No one stays there after dark, Alejandro said, eyes locked on the road. That was her rule. Your mother's? He nodded, jaw tight. She always said silence was safest at night. Lightning flared across the horizon, revealing the jagged silhouette of the mountains ahead. The rain had stopped, but the air was charged with static, the kind of silence that holds its breath before something breaks. They drove in tense quiet until Emily found her voice. That note. It said she should have stayed silent. You think it was about your mother? Yes, he said simply. And maybe about you. Me? He looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable. You're the last voice that spoke to her. Whoever killed her knows that. And if she told you something before she died. She didn't, Emily insisted, then stopped. At least, I don't think she did. Alejandro's gaze stayed fixed on her. Think carefully. Emily tried to remember every sign, every gesture, every flicker in Dona Esperanza's eyes that day. She said you'd come, she whispered. She said I should tell you she smiled, and that she was at peace. Nothing else? Emily hesitated. When she finished her coffee, she touched the table twice. I thought it was just a habit. But then she did this. Emily lifted her hand and repeated the small, graceful motion, 2 taps of her fingertips, then a circular movement across her palm. Alejandro's face went still. You're sure? Yes, why? He exhaled slowly, voice barely audible. That was her private sign for me. For danger. Emily's breath caught. She knew? She always knew. His voice trembled, anger flickering beneath control. Someone close betrayed her, and she tried to warn me through you. The realization hit her like cold water. You think she used me to send a message? Alejandro looked at her, grief and fury mixing in his eyes. I think she trusted you to carry it. A silence settled between them, heavy, alive, filled with things neither dared to say. But it didn't last. From the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights appeared. Then another. Alejandro cursed under his breath. They found us. The road ahead split into 2 narrow paths, one toward the highway, one into the mountains. Without hesitation, he turned toward the mountains. Tires skidding across gravel. The chase began. Engines roared behind them, closing the distance. Bullets cracked through the night, shattering the rear glass. Emily screamed and ducked as shards flew. Alejandro's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Hold on, he muttered, slamming the accelerator. The SUV jolted violently as they hit a rough stretch. The headlights behind them grew smaller, but the echo of pursuit still haunted the air. After several bone-rattling minutes, Alejandro killed the headlights and veered off the dirt road, guiding the SUV into the shadow of an abandoned church sitting alone against the mountainside. He cut the engine. Silence fell again, heavy, breathing, alive. Emily sat trembling, unable to move. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure whoever was out there could hear it. Alejandro reached into the glove compartment, retrieved a small flashlight, and handed it to her. Stay close. Don't speak. They slipped into the church through a side door half swallowed by vines. Inside, moonlight poured through shattered stained glass, casting fractured colors over the cracked pews. The air smelled of dust and candle wax. This was hers too, Alejandro murmured. She used to come here to pray, even after she stopped believing. Emily looked around, feeling the echo of something sacred and haunted. It's beautiful, she whispered. He nodded once. It's safe. Or it should have been. They moved deeper inside, past the altar where faded candles stood in uneven rows. Emily ran her fingers over one, unlit but warm to the touch. Someone's been here, she said. Alejandro's expression darkened. Get down. They ducked behind a pew just as a door creaked open near the back. Footsteps echoed softly. 2 of them. Then a third, voices, low, male, speaking in Spanish. Alejandro caught fragments. No está solo. La chica tambien. They were looking for her. Emily pressed closer to the ground, her breath shallow. Alejandro slipped a small pistol from his holster, his movements slow, deliberate. He looked at her, one finger to his lips. Then, from the shadows near the altar, something moved, a faint flicker, like light reflecting off metal, followed by the soft rustle of fabric. The intruders froze. Then came a whisper, not from them, but from somewhere deeper inside the church. A woman's voice, soft and impossible. It said a single word. Alejandro. His blood turned to ice. Emily looked at him, eyes wide. Did you? He nodded, pale. It's her voice. Before he could move, the candle on the altar flared to life, one sudden burning flame in the darkness. The men near the doorway swore under their breath, retreating a step, and in that dim, trembling light, faint patterns began to move on the wall, shadows forming hands, fingers dancing, spelling words neither of them could mistake. Danger, trust her. Run. Emily's throat went dry. Her pulse thundered in her ears. It's her, she whispered. It's your mother. The guards bolted, shouting to each other as they fled through the rear door. The wind outside picked up, howling through the cracks like a voice that would not rest. Alejandro stood frozen, eyes on the flickering signs of light still pulsing against the cracked wall. She's protecting us, Emily said, tears sliding down her face. He finally turned to her, his expression torn between awe and grief. No, he whispered. She's warning us. A gust of wind slammed the doors open, scattering the candlelight into darkness. And in that instant, Alejandro heard it again, faint, far away. Carried by the wind itself. They're coming. He grabbed Emily's hand. Move! They burst out into the storm as gunfire erupted behind them, echoing off the walls of the broken church, a language of ghosts, of love, and of vengeance that the living could no longer silence. The wind screamed across the desert as Alejandro and Emily ran, half blind through the darkness. The old church behind them burned in silence, its flames licking up toward the bruised sky. Smoke drifted over the road, mixing with dust and rain. They reached a low ridge where the truck had been hidden and dropped behind it, both of them gasping for breath. Alejandro checked the horizon, no lights. For the moment, they were alone. Emily leaned against the fender, trembling. She spoke to us, she whispered. Alejandro, I heard her voice. He kept scanning the dark, his face unreadable. So did I. Then he cut her off gently. No, whatever that was, it wasn't life. It was her will. Lightning tore across the sky, turning the desert white for an instant. Alejandro started the truck. Its engine coughed once and caught. We'll head east, he said. There's a small airstrip near Gallup. From there we can disappear. Emily stared at the burning horizon. Disappear? He looked at her. If we stay, they'll find us both. She hesitated, then climbed into the truck. The road stretched ahead, a black ribbon through miles of nothing. For a while the only sound was the engine and the rain on the windshield. Finally she said, she told us to trust her. Alejandro nodded. And to run. But run from who? You said it was someone close. His jaw tightened. I think I know who. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the note from the church window, the one that had read she should have stayed silent. Now smeared with soot. New writing had appeared beneath it, ink rising where the paper had been burned. Emily squinted at the faint letters, the son. She looked up at him. Your son. He shook his head. No, my brother. Her eyes widened. You have a brother? Had, he said. Raphael, the eldest. He vanished after our father's death. My mother always said he'd gone north to build his own empire. He paused, his voice rough. I never believed he'd come back. But he killed her, Emily whispered. Alejandro didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. They reached the highway just before dawn. The clouds had thinned to a gray mist, and pale light spread across the desert like an old photograph. He pulled the truck over beside a dry riverbed. We can rest here. Emily climbed out, stretching her sore legs. The air smelled of rain and ash. Somewhere far off, coyotes howled. She turned toward him. When this ends, what happens to me? Alejandro met her eyes. You go back to your life? You think I still have one? He didn't answer right away. Then softly, maybe that's what my mother wanted to give you one. He looked at her bracelet, the jaguar glinting faintly in the dawn. That symbol. She used it to mark those she trusted completely. Emily touched it. Then why give it to me? Because she knew you would do what I could not. Before she could ask what he meant, the faint buzz of an engine rose in the distance. A single vehicle, fast. Alejandro tensed. Get down. They crouched behind the truck as a black motorcycle appeared on the horizon, slicing through the mist. The rider wore a dark jacket, helmet reflecting the first rays of light. When the bike skidded to a stop a few yards away, Alejandro stepped out. Gun drawn. The rider removed his helmet. Rafael Vargas looked exactly like his brother, only colder. His smile was thin, his eyes lit with something cruel. Always running, little brother, Rafael said. His voice carried easily through the morning air. Even Mother's ghost can't save you now. Alejandro steadied his aim. You killed her. Rafael shrugged. She chose the wrong heir. Emily stood slowly, heart pounding. She loved both of you. Rafael's gaze snapped toward her. Ah, the girl from the diner. The one who speaks in silence. She was fond of you. She tried to warn us, Emily said. Even after I set her free, he interrupted, stepping closer. She was tired, child. You could see it. Always writing, signing, worrying about him. He nodded at Alejandro. She told you things before she died, didn't she? Emily backed up a step. Alejandro moved in front of her. You'll never touch her. Rafael smiled. I don't need to. You'll destroy her yourself. You can't protect anyone, Alejandro. You couldn't protect her, you won't protect this one. Lightning cracked again, closer this time. The wind whipped sand around them in spirals. Alejandro fired first. The bullet tore through Rafael's jacket, but the older brother barely flinched. He fired back, grazing Alejandro's arm. Emily screamed, diving for cover behind the truck. Rafael advanced, reloading, his boots crunching in the gravel. You always were the weaker one, he said. Always hiding behind women. Alejandro stumbled but kept his gun raised. You don't get to speak her name, Mother? Rafael sneered. She belonged to me long before she gave birth to you. He pulled the trigger, but Emily lunged from behind the truck, slamming into Rafael's arm. The shot went wide. She fell hard against the dirt, pain shooting through her shoulder. Alejandro seized the opening and fired again. The bullet struck true. Rafael staggered, clutching his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. He sank to his knees. The wind died. The desert went silent. Alejandro lowered his weapon slowly, staring at the brother he once admired. She forgave you, he said quietly. Even now. Rafael's lips parted. For a second, something human flickered across his face. Then she was a fool, he whispered, and collapsed. The sun broke over the horizon. Alejandro dropped the gun and fell to his knees beside Emily. She was breathing hard but alive, her hands shaking. He helped her stand. It's over, she said. He looked at the rising sun, at the long shadows stretching east. No, he murmured. But it's finished. They buried Rafael beneath a mesquite tree. Alejandro said nothing, just pressed his hand to the earth and whispered a name only his mother would understand. When it was done, he turned to Emily. You should go, he said softly. She wanted you free. And you? I have to make peace with the ghosts I made. She touched his hand, the one still streaked with dust and blood. You already did. They stood in silence for a long moment, the desert wind warm against their faces. Then Emily slipped off the jaguar bracelet and placed it in his palm. She gave it to me, she said, but it belongs to you. Alejandro looked down at the silver gleam in his hand. No, he said. It belonged to her. And now it belongs to no one. He set it gently on Rafael's grave. When Emily finally drove away, the sky was bright and endless. In the rearview mirror, she saw Alejandro standing alone by the tree, wind tugging at his coat, the silver catching sunlight like fire. She never saw him again. Years later, when travelers stopped at a new diner built along Route 66, they sometimes spoke of a woman who served coffee and could speak with her hands. She wore no jewelry, just a quiet smile and eyes that seemed to listen to things no one else could hear. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the wind moved just right, she would pause mid-pour, look toward the door, and whisper softly, "Thank you, Donna," because silence, she had learned, was not the absence of sound, it was the memory of love that refused to die. The end.